How's it going, everybody? My name's Jason. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to tie up a very simple balanced leech pattern. I like simple flies that catch fish that don't take forever to tie, and this is definitely one of those. This fly has saved the day for me more than once, so I'm going to call it the Slump Buster Blood Leech. Let's get this party started. Alright, in the vise we've got firehole sticks, jig hook in size 8. I think it's a 5/16, barbless. These are fun hooks. I like the shape, I like the gape. I really like the way that they match up with these Pro Tire tungsten head turner beads. I get these at Canadian Llama. And other than that, this is really only some thread and 2 materials. Great simple fly. If you're new to fly tying, this would be a good one to start practicing on. Doesn't take a whole ton of skill to tie it. You can build your confidence, learn your thread control. You don't really need any specialty tying equipment or any specialty materials. It's all pretty simple, readily available stuff. So you don't got to break the bank to tie a bunch of these up. So the 2 materials we'll be using, we're going to use some black marabou for the tail. And this is a really cool material. Basically it's Arizona semi-seal, but this one comes from Spawn Fly Fish, a great little shop out of Ilwaco, Washington. They've got a really good online store if you want to give those guys a look. It's basically Arizona semi-seal, but it's one of their special blends that they make in-house. Let me see if I can get this to... Yeah, you can kind of see it. It's a bleeding black or red and black, but it's got some really cool UV properties to it. It's a fun material to work with for sure. And just some UTC 70, which is one of my go-to threads. I use it for almost every fly I tie. I'm using UTC 70 most of the time. One of the few things that you may not have if you're new to tying is a dubbing spinner. We are going to be making a dubbing loop to make this fly, and a dubbing spinner is certainly helpful. So let's get to tying. So I've put the head turner bead on with the convex side towards the eye of the hook. Let us get our thread started. Work our way back. We're going to prop that, sorry about my fingers here, we're going to prop that bead up so it's sitting the way we want it. Build a little bit of a bead dam here behind the bead. Take a look, make sure it's sitting the way you want. And then we're going to go ahead and bring that thread all the way back. And then back forward. The tail on this guy, I'm going to go probably twice the length of the shank, give or take. I like that. I'm going to go ahead and cut this off. A couple of loose wraps to get that started. And then we're just going to lash that down to the hook, take that all the way back. And I like to throw a few wraps behind the tail. And then in front. And that tail's a little bit long, so I'm going to go ahead and pinch it off just a little bit. If you are going to shorten your tails up, I highly recommend that you pinch the tails off. I was saying that I highly recommend pinching the tails off versus cutting them. Gives it a much nicer, more natural look when it's wet. Sorry for the bouncy video, I just didn't like the way that looked in the frame, so I wanted to center it up a little bit better for you. Alright, now we're going to make a dubbing loop. To do that, we're going to take our thread, make a loop. We're going to tie that off. Go ahead and take your thread all the way forward, and I'm going to hang my dubbing twister right in that loop. A few more wraps, and I'm going to go ahead and whip finish here. Just like a 3 or 4 turn whip finish is all you need. And the only reason we're doing that is because I'm going to use my bobbin cradle for this part of the fly. With this material, this one happened to come in a bag. What I like to do is just cut the corner of the bag off there a little bit, because then you can reach in and pull out little bits without making a big fat mess all over your tying bench or your dining room table or your coffee table or whatever it is that you tie flies. Then we're just going to take some of that dubbing a little bit at a time and get it right in that dubbing loop. If you can, it's not a bad idea to try to create a little bit of taper with your dubbing. You can do that by just adding a little more towards the bottom of the dubbing loop versus the top, and it kind of creates a nice natural taper for you. I like that. Let's go ahead and get that spun up. That looks pretty good. I'm going to give that a brush, free up some of those fibers that we trapped in there. Then I'm going to go ahead and use the rotary option on my vise. Start spinning that back. I'm going to wet my fingers a little bit, start pulling that stuff back. And really, you can make this body as robust or as sparse as you want. Really personal preference, as is most things in fly tying. I'm pretty happy with that. We'll go ahead and get that dubbing loop tied off. Be careful here that you only cut your dubbing loop thread and not your thread that's on your bobbin. Pull everything back, a few turns, and that's basically it. So I'm going to go ahead and take a little bit of UV resin. I'm going to apply that right to the thread. And we're going to whip finish. Make sure that thread's seated nice and tight. Give it a zap. Make sure to put my cap back on my resin because it makes a horrendous mess if you forget and bump it. So I'm just going to brush that back, tease it back a little bit, and once this guy gets wet, that semi-seal just will slick right back into that tail. And that's the finished fly. Let's see if I can show you guys how this material fluoresces. Yeah, there you go. Maybe if I come this direction at it. Yeah, you can see how those fibers really pick up that UV light, and it's not a ton. It's fairly subtle, but it's a cool effect. Thanks so much for watching. Thumbs up, make me feel good. And if you really liked what you saw, please consider subscribing. Until next time, tight lines.